excited to welcome our very own Manager of Senior Community Development and Engagement, Shanda Burns. I'm sure Shanda is a familiar face to many of you. Growing up on a cattle farm in northern Alberta, Shanda comes from a long line of grassroots rural champions with a focus on community connection and integration. Her passion and expertise for community capacity building, systems planning, and gaps analysis is evident in her previous roles with municipal governments and the rollout of targeted projects to assist vulnerable populations with access to critical services. With a focus on strong and healthy relationships and networks, Shanda is passionate about continuing the work of rural community development and engagement team at RhPAP and ensuring our community's unique needs and voices are heard. So today, Shanda is presenting on the AIRtoolkit, which is a new resource our RhPAP has developed over the last few months. And so we're excited to share that with you today. I will now turn things over to Shanda to get us started.
Thank you. So good morning, everybody. As Emily said, my name is Shanda Burns. I'm the Senior Manager of Community Development and Engagement here at RhPAP. Thank you so much for joining this Knowledge Now session. I'm really excited to share the Attraction, Integration, and Retention Toolkit with you. It's been a labor of love, and it has had high impact thus far. So really excited to dive into that. So firstly, I wanted to share both RhPAP's vision statement and mission statement. The vision statement is what you see on the screen. RhPAP was established in 1991 as the Rural Physician Action Plan, and the organization was intended to serve as a comprehensive action plan for recruitment of rural physicians, and that has changed a bit. So in 2017, upon the completion of a Ministry of Health review, the organization was asked to expand its mandate to include nurses and allied health professionals and undertook a name change to the Rural Health Profession Action Plan, or RhPAP, as you've likely heard many times. Next up is the mission statement. So RhPAP is the only organization in Alberta that operates across the full workforce lifecycle, spanning youth pipeline development, post-secondary exposure, physician, nurse, and allied health training support, community integration, and provincial attraction, integration, and retention capacity, which this resource is a huge part of that. Without this continuous lifecycle infrastructure, rural workforce investments generally fragment, recruitment pipelines weaken, and retention outcomes deteriorate. So through trusted local relationships, system partnerships, and evidence-informed programming, RhPAP bridges government priorities with community-led action to ensure healthcare remains accessible, sustainable, and close to home for rural Albertans. So to start the session off in regards to the toolkit, I wanted to share a bit on the purpose of it, why we built it, refined it, and what the layout of the toolkit looks like overall. I'm also a hand talker, so if you see my hands going up a bunch, it means I'm excited about what I'm speaking about. And I apologize, it may be a little bit distracting. So the toolkit is a practical, community-driven guide to help rural Alberta communities attract, integrate, and retain healthcare professionals that was developed in collaboration with rural communities, health employers, Indigenous partners, and rural leaders. The AIR toolkit, you will hear AIR significantly throughout this presentation. It stands for Attraction, Integration, and Retention. That's the acronym. It's a free modular resource made up of separate, self-contained sections that can be used independently or in combination with one another, and I'll touch on that a little bit more. This resource has been developed by RhPAP to support rural communities in creating sustainable, community-led solutions for local healthcare workforce challenges. Whether you're just starting a committee or refining your retention strategy, each section of the toolkit provides concrete guidance, practical tools, and real-life rural examples. It is grounded in collaboration, inclusivity, equity, and innovation. It is partitioned out into 3 independent sections that follow the continuum of attraction, integration, and retention. So as I stated before, these sections can be used as independent components, as well as in collaboration with one another. It really just depends on where you're at within that continuum and where you find it applicable to use in conjunction with one another. So now I'm going to go over each section and provide highlights on what each entail throughout this presentation. Before we dive into the sections encompassing all of it, who is the toolkit's target audience? I get asked this quite a bit. So this resource was developed through the lens of community members, municipal leaders, health employers and volunteers working on attracting, integrating, and retaining healthcare professionals in rural. While the onus on the healthcare industry is paramount throughout this resource, the strategies and processes found in the toolkit are easily adaptable for any industry looking to attract, integrate, and retain workers. So you can glean stuff out of it regardless of what industry you're working with. So without further ado, let's jump right into the first section of the toolkit. This is the heftiest section of the toolkit, and it is the attraction portion of the toolkit. So attracting healthcare professionals to a rural community is more than filling a job. It's about creating a connection that inspires them to see your community as their home. Attraction focuses on marketing your community, highlighting its unique strengths, and creating opportunities for potential healthcare professionals to envision their future. The attraction section of the toolkit is comprised of 5 modules that we'll dive into each. The first module of the toolkit is an overview of what healthcare in rural Alberta has historically and currently looks like. So this module really highlights the various definitions of rural. I'm sure you've heard many times that your rural definition, depending on organization, depending on level of government, changes. So it touches on that a bit. It also really touches on rural and remote communities. They're simply just not non-urban. They are best defined by their unique characteristics, population density, and distance from larger centers. So each of them are unique. We do know that there's workforce maldistribution in Alberta with healthcare professionals choosing urban centers. That is not a surprise to anybody. This module does touch on that a bit. It gives a little bit of a groundwork on understanding those complexities. The healthcare workforce is changing with increasing internationally educated professionals choosing Alberta, and a lot of those individuals are going into rural placements. So this module kind of touches on the difference and kind of the trajectory that we're seeing with our IHPs going into rural. There's also an increasing opportunity to train more healthcare professionals in rural and remote communities, and that is a key to attracting folks to rural. So we've seen this in the Northern Alberta Medical Program, where it's a satellite of the U of A. It's in Grand Prairie. I'm also located in Grand Prairie, and I'm quite involved in NAMP. And we've also seen this in SAMP. So SAMP will be starting up soon, the Southern Alberta Medical Program. So there's more capacity to train in rural in hopes to keep them rural. It also really drives home the point that a strong healthcare system will lead to a more resilient community. Again, that's no surprise to anybody here. If you have a strong healthcare system, generally means that you have a healthier community, healthier citizens, and the community trajectory is just that much better. Changes to Alberta health system make it even more important for attraction, integration, and retention focus, and working closely with those local health employers. And I will touch on that a little bit more as we go through the modules. But this module really just lays the groundwork for what are we seeing historically, what did we see, and what can we expect in the future years. Now that we have a general idea of the rural healthcare landscape and systems at place, the next module in the attraction phase is getting organized on starting and sustaining an attraction, integration, and retention committee. So starting and sustaining a committee can come from a variety of ways. So one way is proactive. So that really means focus on future healthcare workforce needs. So an example of this in real time is if you have a rural community and you know that 3 of the physicians there are going to retire in the next 2 years, and there's a few folks that are talking about this and wondering, how can we ensure that we're attracting individuals to fill those spots, et cetera, et cetera. They might form a committee with that sole purpose in mind. So that is a proactive lens to starting a committee. It can also be a reactive lens, and that can be focusing on today's health workforce needs and those pressure points that we're seeing right now. So maybe it's ER closures, maybe it's strain, we can't fill an FTE, what does this really mean? It can be reactive, or it can be a mixture of both. So you might start a committee to say, we know this is going to happen. We know this is happening right now. Let's get together. Let's have a bit of a brainchild and work forward as a committee and a collective voice. So the intent of the committee is to foster greater collaboration in communities, build relationships, and strengthen capacity to collectively address challenges in healthcare workforce issues, right? So the key point there is the collective mindset, and I'll touch on that a little bit more as well. So collaboration, it requires you to think differently about how you work with others by focusing the collective efforts around a shared problem and working together to find those solutions. So what I mean by that is oftentimes you have a committee that is various membership, and each might have something else or something different that they want to work on, but the commonality is kind of the same. How can you work together and build out a shared agenda and a shared vision to move forward versus separate agendas? And that is a focus of this module. The experience of community members and organizations working together to collaboratively solve problems creates a better community capacity and empowerment that can be a template for other challenges. So that collaborative nature is really key in this module. It really focuses on that and some strategies on how to do that, tapping into those community strengths, and laying the groundwork for it. Okay, so we know it needs to be a collaborative effort. It needs to be a collective voice. How do we move forward next? This module also touches on the role of advocacy. So there are groups that really love to advocate and move forward in that lens, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. RhPAP actually hosted a Knowledge Now session previously on the role of advocacy and what does that mean in rural and how can you make those points connect and what is actually within your sphere of influence in your circle of control. This module touches on that a little bit too. Advocacy is both an art and a science. And how can you, as a committee, focus your efforts? This is what we have control over. Do we need to advocate, or is this more of an internal challenge that we need to advocate amongst ourselves and amongst our community? So it touches on that a little bit. It's not super hefty in this module, but it does lay some groundwork for it. So Module 2 is intended to set the stage for Module 3, which breaks down step-by-step instruction on how to set up and run an AIR committee. Arguably, this is the heftiest module in the toolkit. As you can tell, it is the most administratively dense. It is a lot of work to start a committee. That's not to scare you, but if you want to start a committee and you start it right, then it takes a lot of work and strategy in order to do this. So you have this group of people, that really want to start a committee. We know that we want to get this done. How do you know who else needs to sit on that committee? How do you know the membership that you would like to have on this committee, and what are some of the frameworks there? So one of the frameworks that this module touches on is the Partnership Pentagram Plus framework to seek a diverse and strategic membership for the committee. So this framework utilizes various different strategies to ensure that you're having representatives from healthcare providers, community members, health managers, education institutions, local and First Nations governments, and linked sectors. So that diversity on your committee is very, very key to ensure that you have a holistic view of who's sitting at the table on what the healthcare needs look like. And if you need to draw other members, depending on the challenges that you're facing, this also gives a bit of a groundwork on that too. So successful committees focus on collective decision-making and shared goals rather than individual organizational agendas that I touched on before. This module really hammers that home. And it also provides a lot of templates. So when you go on our website, we do have a lot of templates for creating a clear terms of reference and committee agreement. This helps members unite around a common vision, build trust, and develop a collaborative foundation so all members feel valued and connected to the committee's core purpose. I don't know if any of you have sat on committees, I'm sure you have, where you have sat there, you've listened, you try to partake, but something is just not clicking. Something is like, oh, you know what? I don't know if I'm really a valued member of this committee. It doesn't really meet what I thought it was. How can we overcome that? This module really touches on that to ensure that everybody has buy-in to what you're working towards and everybody has a really key role. It is very important for the success of a committee in order to do that. Okay. Committees naturally go through different stages of development, and understanding these dynamics is crucial. So I know that we're pushing 70 attraction, integration, and retention committees across the province, which is incredible. It is also next to none in Canada. So we are kind of the poster child for attraction, integration, and retention committees in Alberta, which we are very proud of. Committees that have been long-standing, they will generally go through cycles in that committee structure. So that might be they're super gung-ho at first, and then they meet that target, they meet that action that they formed for, and then they're wondering what the heck to do. And then, oh my goodness, we're losing buy-in, and it comes down in that trajectory. That is a very natural committee cycle. It's also a very healthy committee cycle. And this module touches on that. So it's kind of like the groan zone that we call it, where, oh, we're doing so good, and then we're kind of stalled. And that is probably one of the harder bumps in the road for committees to overcome. But I do want to hammer that home that it is very natural in the committee cycle. So it touches on that, and that's something that I really love about this module, is that it's realistic. It really does tell it how it is and lets individuals know, especially if you're experiencing that in the committee level, that you're not doing anything wrong. It is a committee cycle, and here's some strategies to kind of overcome that hump. Okay. Committees should be open to adjusting their membership priorities and operational boundaries to best serve community needs. So again, in that committee cycle, sometimes it changes, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, you know what? Our priorities are shifting a little bit. And how do we figure that out? How can we come to a common vision? And this touches on that a bit in terms of how to start and what that looks like. And then there's another portion where RhPAP actually recently has started providing road mapping sessions. So some of you might know them as strategic planning sessions for our attraction, integration, and retention committees. And this is a fantastic way for committees to all get on the same page and come up with some goals that they want to achieve and identify those community champions, whether they're on the committee or outside of a committee, on how to achieve those. And then measurement tools on, okay, we're going to say we're going to do this. How do we measure that we're actually successful? So road mapping sessions are fantastic. The rural community consultants that you will be talking to in your Q&A run those sessions. So if your committee is interested in that, by all means, connect with the rural community consultants. So once your committee is struck and going, which is fantastic, that's a huge first step in the attraction, integration, retention kind of continuum. It's important to understand your community's health workforce needs. And this is where Module 4 comes into play. When I say this, it means, okay, so everybody has an idea of what a community needs, right? So whether there's a shortage of physicians, nurses, nurse practitioners, allied health professionals, you name it, we will likely know generally coming at the table what that looks like. But in terms of who's doing the recruitment, how do you get that information? Who's doing talent acquisition as their recruiter? This is where this module comes into play. You really need to have an understanding of what your healthcare needs are as a community as a whole. And this module provides some strategies to do that. So one of the strategies, one of the frameworks that's utilized in this module is an assets-based community development tool, or ABCD tool, which focuses on community strengths rather than deficits. And I will say that oftentimes committees get struck because they have noticed a deficit. And when we are working forward in terms of our goals, in terms of our vision, what we want to accomplish as a committee, it is important, while it's totally fine to strike a committee on the deficit approach, the work to overcome that deficit needs to be flipped in terms of the narrative to what strengths does your community have, and how can we highlight that and leverage that to help overcome this deficit. So communities really need to understand their healthcare workforce needs within the larger regional, provincial context, and they're better positioned to develop effective attraction, integration, and retention strategies to do that. So, for example, there are physician resource planners within Alberta Health Services, within Covenant Health, that will oftentimes have a connection with the attraction, integration, and retention committees to talk about what they're doing to recruit, individuals within that community where there's roadblocks, if there's site tours. So something that is highly effective that attraction, integration, and retention committees can do is be part of those site tours, because they are really the community's expert voice, and they can highlight that community to that prospective employee. And that's where we see some really great collaboration happening with our physician resource planners and even our talent acquisition contacts within Alberta Health Services, Covenant Health, PCNs. So having a really good connection with those individuals that are doing the direct recruitment is very important. And that is where your rural community consultant can help bridge that gap, because we do have connections across the province with those individuals. Okay. Committees should be realistic about the current healthcare workforce limitations and consider alternatives that recruiters put forward, such as nurse practitioners, internationally trained professionals, and multidisciplinary teams, and innovative approaches like prescribing pharmacists. This is no surprise to rural. This module touches on that, but it is no surprise. I am sure that many of you on this call have a really great relationship with the pharmacists, for example, because they bridge that gap. They really help in terms of services and caring for the individuals in rural. And oftentimes, if recruiters are having a difficult time getting somebody to fill a full FTE, et cetera, there's a discussion around innovative approaches here. It's not to say that you can't continue to work on that recruitment phase and highlighting your community, but in the interim, understanding where the strengths lie and what options there are that are brought forward from the recruiters is very important. It is imperative. This module also gives a committee work plan template. So once you have kind of a general idea of what you guys want to do as a committee and how you want to move forward, putting that into a committee work plan is really important. So it's visible. It is something that you can come back on and say, oh yeah, we met this. Oh, you know what? We're kind of missing the mark on there. Do we need to refocus our efforts? Do we need to pivot? What does that look like? So there's templates there. Again, the rural community consultant that is for your zone is an incredible resource to help throughout this entire process. Now the groundwork has been laid on an action plan to get started. So the toolkit now moves into strategies and implementation frameworks on how to attract healthcare professionals. Something that we get asked significantly, I would say, is how does attraction differ from recruitment? Attraction involves marketing your community to healthcare professionals, while recruitment is the employer's hiring process. So attraction is, how can we make it so that somebody wants to come here when they have 15 different options? How can we market this community to be like the number one option here? How can we draw on our strengths? The recruitment aspect of that is to say the recruiter has an FTE that they have to fill, and they're going through that more technical logistical process to getting that individual there and in a position. Oftentimes attraction and recruitment, they do go hand in hand, because you're not going to be able to recruit if you can't successfully attract, right? So this module focuses on that a bit. It touches on various ways that you can highlight your community. So community profiles, which RhPAP works hand in hand with our rural communities that do have an attraction and integration and retention committee to build out those community profiles to help market your community. So if you do have an AIR committee, we are more than happy to kind of take that on. It talks on site visits, how you can do a really effective site visit in collaboration with the recruiters that are working in the area. Personalized tours, which I think they don't get a lot of love, but they are an incredibly powerful attraction tool. When there's that personalized tour, so that's really getting to know that healthcare professional that's coming into your community and what their passions are, what is really important for them to move into a community that it has to have, and highlighting that. When you personalize it versus making it generic, it's more impactful. I know it would be for me, and I've heard it many, many times across the province. So these tours, they should highlight local amenities, lifestyle options, and create opportunities for prospective professionals to meet current healthcare providers and community members. So it is important for that prospective healthcare employee to go and meet who they would be working with, right? Who doesn't want that particular opportunity? It is great to get the vibe, to meet some familiar faces if you come back, et cetera, et cetera. It's also very important to have a community member there because that community member is the champion. They know that community. They know how to highlight it. And while a lot of onus, especially in the recruitment process, is put on what you can expect in that work environment, they're not going to be working 24/7. So what will they be able to experience when they're on days off? How can they be part of the community in terms of what they're really passionate about? And that's why the community tours with community members are so vital. Part of attraction that we see across the province is financial incentives. Okay? They have limited effectiveness in attracting rural healthcare professionals, depend on who you talk to in the area of the province that you're in. I'm not saying that they are a bad thing. They have their space in the attraction process. However, we've done a bunch of studies on this, and the more influential factors include a welcoming community, a comprehensive scope of practice, a supportive healthcare team, and proximity to family and friends. I know that there's many people, they don't really want to be away from their family and friends, and that's okay. That's a very natural human reaction and a human need. So how can we ensure that there's options for them, right? So financial incentives may get them there, absolutely, but how can you weave them into the community? And we'll talk a little bit about that in their integration phase. The most effective long-term attraction strategy that this module touches on is providing rural training opportunities for healthcare students. As evidence shows, people who train in rural areas are more likely to practice there later. So this picture on this slide is a third-year medical student. She's doing her clerkship. She's staying in the RhPAP accommodation in Viking, and having the students there experiencing the community while they're doing rotations, while they're finishing up their schooling, et cetera, et cetera. It is an incredible attraction tool. That is your time to shine as a community. To try to hook them in, right? Try to say, hey, you know what? This is a fantastic area to live. It's a fantastic place to work. We don't want you to leave. We really value that you're here. And so providing those opportunities for students is very key. RhPAP does host Let's Go Rural opportunities. So we do bring post-secondary students that are in a healthcare related field out to rural communities over a weekend, either 1 or 2 days, to experience why living, working, and thriving in rural is a top tier choice. Those have been quite successful. We have a ton of data from students to say they love it. We also have quite a bit of data for students that have gone to Let's Go Rural that have chosen to go back to rural. Whether it was that community that was highlighted or not is a different story, but it really gets them thinking about rural. We also start in high school. So we host our high school skills days where students that are, they might be interested in healthcare. They might have had the thought, but they're not 100% sure, and that's okay. We host skills days with rural practitioners that are within that community or that region, and they do hands-on skills to learn that, you know what, you can actually do this skill in rural because I'm doing it in rural, and let's talk about that while we do this skill. So that can be suturing, porcox. We have some fainters, some people love it. Some people are like, I can do this, and they faint, and that's okay. Thank goodness that we have healthcare professionals there that can, take care of them. That can be that can be, doctors, nurse practitioners, optometrists, dentistry, you name it. That is the time for that region and that community to highlight the different type of healthcare professionals, healthcare professions in that community and do hands-on skills while talking to students about it. They're highly successful. We do have our EOI open for both our high school events and our post-secondary events. And if you are interested, please do take a look at that on our website. Now we're going to go into the module of integration. So integration is arguably one of the most forgotten about aspects of the attraction, integration, and retention continuum. It often gets clumped into either attraction. Most times it gets lumped in with retention, but it is its own separate entity. So now that you've attracted a healthcare professional to your community, what's next? This module speaks to the integration aspect of it, and how we can integrate both the professional and the support system, if they come with one, to that rural community. So there's a difference between welcoming individuals and integrating them. So welcoming focuses on meeting individuals' immediate needs during a healthcare professional's first few months in a community, while integration involves creating meaningful connections to foster a sense of belonging over the longer term. The longer term is the most important aspect of integration. How can we integrate individuals into a community so that the thought doesn't even cross their mind to leave this rural community? They are so woven into this social fabric, and my team is probably rolling their eyes because I say this a lot. They're so woven into the social fabric of that community that they could imagine themselves anywhere else. And this is what this module focuses on. So effective welcome planning includes creating comprehensive welcome packages, setting realistic expectations about community life, preferably before arrival, so that they're not necessarily shocked when they get there. And that's where it's really important to have that connection with the recruiters. And then assigning dedicated navigators as single points of contact whenever possible. If you have ever gone to a new community, brand new to you, you don't really know anybody, you're trying to start a life there, and somebody hands you a sheet of paper that has 15 different contacts on it, each individual. So this individual's for banking, this individual's for, religious affiliation. Like, it just really depends. That is very overwhelming for individuals that are starting life in a rural community. And this module really drives home the fact that if you have a single point of contact, that navigator, you have higher success. So it's not to say that this navigator is the one-stop shop. So they're going to be the ones to take them to the bank and the grocery store and to get a license if they need one, et cetera, et cetera. No, they're going to be that main person that questions are going to arise there, and that person may refer them out. They may take them as well, or they may know the best community contact and do that warm introduction. So when I say warm, it's face to face. That's really important. So that single point of contact is quite heavy in this particular module. Family integration. So if you're a single parent coming with your family, with your children, if you are a dual partnership household with family that are coming, it is so important to not only focus on that healthcare professional's integration, because if you only focus on that healthcare professional's integration, yet that spouse is out of work, those children do not know what the natural supports are there, if there's group social activities, et cetera, the likelihood of those individuals staying, if their family is unhappy, is very, very low. If we can integrate their families into the community in that social fabric across the board, it is incredible. And that's actually what we see here with this picture in Wainwright. So Wainwright's main navigator has taken international healthcare workers and integrating them into her family and has taken them out for everything under the sun. And it's been incredibly successful. The other part that this module focuses on is ensuring that we foster inclusivity for professionals from diverse backgrounds. So that includes international workers, that includes people of color, that includes 2SLGBTQI plus individuals, and understanding the nuances in your community, what supports there are for those individuals in your community, and if we need to expand, if we need to do education, awareness, and proactively addressing any potential barriers that you may see there. That is incredibly important as well. People need to feel that they can be themselves, both at work and at home. And that kind of starts in the community level. Integration is an ongoing process, and it requires flexibility across the board, and it's tailored to the healthcare professionals' changing needs. One part, and this is the part that I'm going to end this particular module with, is ensuring that you are not telling that professional that you're trying to integrate that you know what they need. We will often say, oh, we know that they're going to love a rec pass, so we're going to get them a recreational pass. But you might not know that they actually cannot use that recreational pass because maybe they have multiple sclerosis and they can't move the way that the rec pass entails. Maybe we're saying that, okay, you know what, we're going to take them here or there or the other place, and they actually don't want to do that. They really just they're a little bit more introverted, and they just want that one point of contact, and that's enough. So getting to know the professional in your community, their family needs, and asking them what they need versus telling them what they need is an incredible aspect of the integration framework. And that is where I'm going to leave this module. And now we go into the retention portion. So this is the last section of the toolkit, and it is the kind of longer term portion of the toolkit. So module 7 is retaining healthcare professionals, some strategies on that, what it looks like in real time, and how RhPAP assists in this. So first and foremost, retention is a shared responsibility. So employers, community committees, local government, and residents, they all play a role in making healthcare professionals feel valued, supported, and part of the community fabric. So oftentimes we say, well, what are the retention bonuses? What is a healthcare employer doing in order to ensure that they don't want to leave that particular position? That's a valid point. Retention and ensuring that they love where they're working is important for individuals needing and wanting to stay. There's also the retention part in terms of community. So you might be happy at work, but if you're not happy outside of work and the community is not really welcoming to you, you don't really know where you stand in the community, we're not doing a great job at retention at that point. So this module provides retention strategies, and it is critical. So retention is increasingly considered the critical focus for sustaining rural healthcare services in Alberta, with evidence showing that healthcare professionals from rural backgrounds who have trained in rural and remote communities are likely to stay long term. So that's the students, that's starting from high school, even junior high school, post-secondary, opening the doors, highlighting your communities in the best way possible. That's kind of where it starts. And then retaining them long term. It is really a shared responsibility. So effective retention requires a team approach involving the entire committee, in addition to community members and other stakeholders across the board. They might not even sit at the table, but you can still bring them in for your retention work, to create an environment that supports healthcare professionals across the board. We do say that, a retention strategy is great, and that can be part of your committee work plan as well. It includes clear goals, realistic actions, and an evaluation plan to assess success, with the understanding that it's a living document that requires regular assessment and adaptation. So if you have those clear goals in mind and you're just consistently not meeting that mark, or you're exceeding that mark, which would be fantastic, who doesn't want to do that? You have to constantly adapt and say, okay, maybe these goals are a little bit too lofty, or maybe we don't have the right people at the table. How can we bring that strategy back, so that we're more effective in the efforts that we're putting forward and our time is more effective? And that's great. I love that. That is a fantastic committee structure. I've talked about it: spouse employment and childcare, improving community livability. That's all part of the retention phase of it. Some people might love the community for a few years and then something might happen, and constantly being in tune with that as a committee and saying, we're experiencing this as a community, and maybe we should check in with our healthcare professionals and see how they're doing. A small discussion. So oftentimes, and I hear this and I see this quite a bit across the province, is oftentimes we might see retention as this big to do, right? So we might see it as, we have to host this barbecue, or we have to do this, that, or the other thing. Those all have their place, and they are fantastic efforts in retention. One of the most impactful ways in terms of retention that we've seen is just those touch bases, those checkpoints, those friendships. Asking those healthcare professionals, hey, how are you doing? Do you want to go for coffee? We want to talk about it, talk about what's going on, or just talk about life outside of work. People may not see that as a retention strategy and just retention overall, but it is. It is highly impactful, and it's a low effort, kind of low investment retention strategy that has an incredibly high impact. So I wanted to leave that with you as well. Again, retention bonuses, et cetera, they do have their place. I will say this as well, that, we do see bonuses or incentives to say, you know what, if you come here, return of services 3 years, you might get $15,000. That's just an example. That's fine. That will likely get them to come. But how can you ensure that they stay after those 3 years? That's where this module comes into play. Retention is incredibly important in that continuum. There's a ton of different things. There's intrinsic factors such as community integration, workplace support, and quality of life. They have a really significant influence in people's choice to stay. And this module highlights how can you get to know what that is for your healthcare workforce and those professionals in your community. How can you understand that maybe retention looks a little bit different for internationally educated healthcare professionals? And what does that mean? How do we need to kind of shift our efforts here? And what are some strategies that we can utilize? And this is a perfect opportunity in this module to see what fits with you and what you want to glean and what you want to move forward with. I wanted to share this picture because this picture is a highlight in terms of a retention strategy. So during Alberta Rural Health Week, that's in May, there's often healthcare appreciation barbecues or awards, you name it. And it's an opportunity for a community and a committee, if there's a committee at play here, to just give a thanks to the healthcare professionals in the community. And this particular barbecue was hosted in Vermilion last year. And I do want to say that healthcare is a broad spectrum, right? And it's not any surprise to anybody that's listening on this call. It is from environmental scientists all the way up to specialists, right? And they should all be appreciated with equal fervor in terms of who's coming to the table, who's doing the work, because without one, another one can't thrive. So that's where this retention and the appreciation is really key. And if you want to check out the toolkit, which I hope you do, on our website, if you want to scan the QR code, it bumps you right to our website. And everything that I said, all the modules, they're all there. There's various templates for you to utilize. There's a lot of information there, and you can dive right into it. And lastly, before we go into our Q&A, I just want to put a little bit of a plug on our RhPAP's conference. So we are hosting it this year in Peace River, October 6th to 8th, and it is rooted in community. So it is a fantastic opportunity for individuals to come to discuss rural healthcare in the landscape, to network with folks that are doing similar work, and listen to some really amazing speakers and knowledge keepers around what makes rural and remote medicine and just healthcare in general thrive, and what are we seeing, and how can we all work together towards a common goal? Because we know that the rural healthcare landscape is changing, and there's a lot of strength when we're all under that shared vision, as I've said before. So early bird tickets go on sale in April. Check them out. They'll be on our website. And that is my presentation.
Thank you, Shanda, for walking us through the toolkit this morning. I know a lot of hard work went into preparing this resource for communities, and it's really exciting for all of us to see it being shared. And joining us on the call are our wonderful team of rural community consultants. I'll now invite them to introduce themselves and share their zone boundaries.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Alicia Fox. So good to see everybody on the call. And I currently live in Innisfail, just south of Red Deer. I full-time support the West Central Zone, so that goes north to Edson, Hinton, and Jasper, runs down the west side of the number 2 highway, and then goes down to essentially Carstairs, just because Airdrie is a little bit too big. Then we hop over that Calgary metropolitan area and head to the South Zone, just a maternity leave cover. So this is an interim position for me. So anything south of Calgary under 15,000, I'm your person to answer some questions and support there.
And I will say that she is crushing the interim spot in the South Zone. So good job, Alicia. You're welcome.
I'm just on a great team. All right. Who do you want me to throw it to? Anya?
I'm Anya Lanko, and I am Alicia's counterpart to the east, supporting the East Central region. My region that I work with is from Highway 2 to the Saskatchewan border, up to Two Hills at the top, where I was born, and down to Drumheller and Oyen in the south. I am from Vegreville area originally and currently based out of Fort Saskatchewan. I'll throw it over to our third A on the team, Anita.
Thanks, Anya. Hi, everyone. So my name's Anita Fion, and I'm the Rural Community Consultant for the Northeast Zone, so just above where Anya is. And I cover North Wood Buffalo area and east towards Cold Lake Bonnyville, and then down south, I guess my south would be St. Paul Elk Point. And just to note, I grew up in Lakeland area, so we had a small farm just north of St. Paul. And then the other communities I cover to the west side would be Barrhead and Marythorpe's Whitecourt, and then moving into Swan Hills and Wabasca Slave Lake. And I hang my hat in Westlock. And so I support all the communities in between that area.
And I will jump in after Anita. My name is Bethany, and I am the Northwest consultant. I bump up right against Anita, and my zone starts with High Prairie, heading all the way to the BC border. I also cover all the way to the north, including High Level, Fort Vermilion, and Lacrete, and then all the way south down to Grand Cache. I'm originally from the DeBolt area, if anybody knows the Northwest area, and currently reside my hat in Grand Prairie.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for sharing and for those introductions. I don't see any questions so far in the chat, but I do have a few questions prepared to get us started. The first question is for a community that's just getting started. What's the first step you would recommend when using the AIR toolkit?
I came into a region that was very well established with a large number of committees, and then have been able to get a few going in a few new regions. So we did have a prior toolkit to this, so we've used some of those resources and updated them and carried them forward. So I think it's really valuable when you bring a consultant to the table. We're coming with those resources. We can talk you through who should be at the table, who do you have involved in the conversation, the basics of getting an agenda and minutes template set up. I just did that for a newish committee. I took minutes for them for the first meeting before they had a secretary in place. And once you get those pieces in place, then you'd look at establishing your terms of reference. And then from there, the work will flow. So we are here to support. If you're a community that doesn't have an A&R committee, we would love to work with you. We're passionate about the work that we do, and we're eager to come and support you in any way possible.
I will also add on to that is that the toolkit, while it starts off with, if you want to start a committee, what does that look like, et cetera, et cetera. If you are an existing group, and I will say this as well, the community development engagement group is what you see here. While a lot of our work is focused on the committees that are doing this particular work, there's also informal groups that are doing this work that may not have the capacity to form an actual formal committee. So we see this more so in remote areas where there's this analogy that is in the toolkit, and it does get touched on a bit, is that the same 10 people, the same 10 hats, they're on various committees, they're doing all the work all the time, and they just don't have it in them. The capacity is just not there to build a committee, and that's totally fine. There's still a significant amount of the toolkit that they can glean out for their efforts to help drive them forward. So whether you're starting a committee or you're already doing the work, but you're wondering, oh, maybe there's something else here that I can look into, you can jump into various modules and see what works for you depending on where you're at within that continuum. So I wanted to say you don't have to start at module 1. You can start at module 5. It just depends on where you're at.
Thanks so much, Shanda, for sharing that. That actually answers the question that we just got into the chat very well, I believe. I'll read it out for you just in case you didn't have a chance to see that one, if there's anything else you wanted to add. So the question comes from Jenna. She said, in dental, capacity to form these types of committees and strategies can be limited because it is often a dentist who is the business owner and looking to attract, integrate, and retain in addition to their normal role. Yeah, quite similar to what you just said there. Do you have any adaptations or suggestions for a smaller scale or independent office?
I can jump in a little bit here. I think that the strategies that are put in place here, as well as the broader concepts of attraction, integration, and retention, they work whether you're talking about a physician or a nurse or other allied health or a private sector. Really, it's taking a look at what do they need when they get here? How can they be connected with the people both in their community and where they work? And where are those touch points that you can say, hey, you really belong here? And I think that's the biggest takeaway is that these concepts can be broadly applied or they can be specific to anyone, either in healthcare or beyond. It's really about building that community and making sure that everyone feels like they have their space. So I don't know if that specifically answers it, but it is whether it's small scale or large. I think that the concepts are pretty broad. So.
Wonderful. Thanks, Alicia, for sharing that. We have just a few more questions or a few more minutes for questions. If you have any lingering questions, please send them in. One more question from me. What's one common challenge communities might face when using the toolkit, and how can they overcome it? Who would like to jump in?
I can take a stab and the rest of the team can jump in. The first thing that comes to mind for me is if you're brand new to the work or you're brand new on the committee, it might seem a little overwhelming with all the modules and all the resources. But I think referring back to what Shanda said is identifying the initial need and start there and then build from there. So I don't think you have to, go through the entire toolkit and get it all going at once, so to speak. You have to see who's at the table, what are your initial needs, and then start small and build from there.
Honestly, and when you go through the toolkit, especially in I would say module 3, because that's the heftiest module in the toolkit, it can be overwhelming when you're looking at it because it is quite word dense. There's a lot of talk there. But taking it bite by bite, step by step, and not thinking you have to do all of this all at once in order to be successful. And, team, I would actually really love for you to share the average length of time from thinking about it to conception of a committee. What is that length of time average in your region that it takes for a committee to actually start up doing this work?
I can jump in because I actually just referenced that in preparation for a road mapping session that I'm doing. So the first touch point I had with the committee was in fall of 2023. I met the mayor at AB Munis, and the committee had their first official meeting in June of 2024. So there was a lot of conversations between that point where we met. We connected them with our accommodation team. So as Anita and Shanda and Alicia both all mentioned, it's a continuum, I think, with AIR work. The modules are numbered, the work isn't numbered. It is ongoing. There's never a finish line. And the second you check a box, there's another piece that needs to be addressed. So I think if you're new to the work, try not to get overwhelmed. Lean on the other individuals at the table who might have more experience in that work. And I just wanted to do a shout out too in terms of the dental work. As Alicia mentioned, we do have community profiles on our website. Those are available for anybody. So be sure to access those, include them in your packages, put them on your websites. We create them, you use them, and they're a great resource for the communities we support.
Yeah, and I can jump in a little bit because I've had a hand in supporting communities kind of all over to get these brand new committees going, as all of my colleagues have. But I think it really depends on the community and it depends on who's readily available and there's so many pieces that play in. So I've had a committee start within 6 months of first talking about it. I mean, I would say that you probably can't get anything going sooner than that unless you're super motivated, but it takes a little while. And beyond that, there was one community that, they've done some work off and on, and they had some events, and it took upwards of 4 or 5 years of just conversation before suddenly all of the pieces fit together and then they came off and running. And I don't think that's an uncommon thing to see. So it really depends on your community. It does take a little bit of patience and hard work, but it's definitely worth it.
Because I know Anita's had some new communities or committees pop up in her area. So if you've noticed, in each region, it's a little bit different. Each region is unique. It's unique in the number of committees, depending on population density and how long they take to strike up. So Anita, would you say it's quite similar for the ones that have struck up in your area?
Yeah, I think it really varies. If the group is new to each other, sometimes that definitely takes a lot longer. And I'm always pleasantly surprised when I'm trying to get a group going about the work that is happening behind the scenes that we don't even know about. So it's a matter of like liaising all the people that are doing the work on the side already and bringing them together in one room. And then I think when they realize that some of the work has already started, it doesn't seem so overwhelming. And I mean, I could have anything from like starting up from like the initial meeting and they're just off and running to ups and downs, because sometimes you have a couple really key drivers that want to get going and things change or council changes, new members at the table, and then it almost is like a regrouping and we got to start all over again, and that can just take a little bit of time and, like was said, patience. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say Bethany, Northwest is very similar. Northwest is some of our longest standing committees in the province. But there is a few communities that there's been work for the last 5-6 years and they have not formed yet. But the conversations are ongoing and there's always A&R or AIR work being done. It's just that formalization of a committee that has not quite come to fruition yet.
Thank you everyone for your questions. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to us via email. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us.